Hello, Mike Ako, and good afternoon. Mahalo for joining today's AEN Agriculture Environment hearing. It's January 27, 2025, and we're convened here in room 224 and video conferencing, which includes the audio and video of remote participants that's being streamed live on YouTube. In the unlikely event that this hearing is cut short, the committee will reconvene to discuss any outstanding business on Wednesday, January 29th at 1:01 p.m. during AEN's time slot, and a public notice will be posted on the legislature's website. And because of our 90-minute time limit for hearings, there'll be a 2-minute time limit for all testifiers, and we'll have a virtual countdown timer on the Zoom screen. So we have 12 measures on today's 1 p.m. agenda, so let's get started. We're with SB 559, proposing an amendment to Article 1 of the Hawaii State Constitution to recognize and protect the inherent and inalienable right of all people to clean water and air, a healthful environment and climate, healthy native ecosystems, and beaches. Proposes a constitutional amendment to ensure that the inherent and inalienable right of the people, including future generations, to clean water and air, a healthful environment and climate, healthy native ecosystems, and beaches shall be protected and shall not be infringed. And first up, testifying is Reese Nakamura from the Attorney General's Office.
They're unavailable on Zoom.
He's here in person.
Actually, good afternoon, Senator. My name's Lyle Leonard. I'm a Deputy Attorney General, standing in for Reese. The department submitted testimony with comments, just with some concerns about the challenges that the proposed amendment may have for future legislatures, as well as for departments enforcing environmental laws. So I'm available for comment or questions. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Lyle. Next is Leah Laramie from the Climate Commission.
Hello, Chair Gabbard, Vice Chair Richards, Leah Laramie with the Hawaii State Climate Change Mitigation and Adaptation Commission. We stand on our testimony and support and available for any questions. Mahalo.
Thank you, Leah. Sierra Kahakane from the Department of DLNR. They are in support. Hunter Hevelin from Hawaii Farmers Union.
Thank you, Chair. Will stand on our written testimony and support.
Thank you, Hunter. Ted Boland from the Climate Protectors Hawaii.
Good afternoon, Chair Gabbard, Vice Chair Richards, Ted Boland for the Climate Protectors Hawaii. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. Climate Protectors of Hawaii are, excuse me, are in strong support of this measure. The Constitution currently certainly has a strong environmental protection in it already, but it needs to have more, and this constitutional amendment would enable the voters to decide what they want in their constitution. And it's important at this time when we're facing climate change as a really strong threat to our islands in so many ways going forward, that we include something about the healthful climate, which is in this bill. So that's the main change I think that it makes. It's really important. And so that's why we give it strong support. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. Available for questions.
Thank you, Ted. Sherry Pollock from 350 Hawaii. There she is. Hey, Sherry. Your sound. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Okay. Well, my name is Sherry Pollock, and I'm with 350 Hawaii, and I want to thank the committee for hearing this very important measure today. I'll stand on my written testimony, but I do want to mention a couple things. First of all, I have to respectfully disagree with the Attorney General's office and their assessment of this measure. For one thing, I just have to think back at that moment, back when a department made a decision to issue a permit to store jet fuel 100 feet above our water aquifer. And I strongly believe that if we had had a green amendment in place at that time, and the department would have considered the environment when making that decision, that we would not be in the water crisis we are in right now. We need a green amendment to help our departments remember to consider the environment when making all their important decisions, and we'll all be better off for it. So I think Ted really said it best. I don't think I could say it any better than him, but I did want to emphasize that this measure is about helping to ensure that we have better government decision-making, and it will be a win-win for all of us. So thank you so much for hearing this measure. I think we all understand that it's important to have clean water, clean air to breathe, a healthy climate ecosystem, and all the other inalienable rights won't matter if we don't have those. So thank you so much for hearing this, and much gratitude to you. Aloha.
Aloha. Thank you, Sherry. Next is Dave Mullenix from Greenpeace Hawaii.
Aloha. Can you hear me? You hear me?
Yes. Hello, Dave.
Yes. Hi. Dave Mullenix, Greenpeace Hawaii. Thank you, Senator Gabbard, for hearing this very important legislation. Just quickly, AG's office expressed concern about the Hawaii Green Amendment might spur frivolous lawsuits. Such concerns are unsupported by the laws or the actual facts. There hasn't been any inappropriate litigation on constitutional environmental rights, and the states already enjoy Green Amendment protections. Rather, the lawsuit brought forth have been important and reasonable and actually help protect the air, water, soil, health, and proper interpretation of environmental laws passed by those state governments. The Green Amendment enforced in Pennsylvania, Montana, New York have been used by state regulatory agency, attorney generals, and local government bodies to protect their own governmental authority and the ability to pursue environmental protection. In fact, there is no litigation has been dismissed as frivolous because of a Green Amendment claim. Most of the Green Amendment protections have been brought but to help government officials and the courts interpret environmental regulations that are already on the books. I think it's also important to note that we have a right to a gun, but we don't have an environment, and there's something wrong about that. I think that a safe, clean environment is much more important than having a right to a gun. So we really appreciate you hearing this legislation, and we encourage you to pass it for the betterment of all in Hawaii. Mahalo nui loa.
Thank you, Dave. Next is Tanya Ainezazian from the Chamber of Sustainable Commerce. Tanya here in support. Ruta Jordans from Zero Waste Kauai. In support. Ann Frederick from Hawaii Alliance for Progressive Action. In support. By the way, there are 46 in support and 0 opposed to this bill, so I can keep saying support. So they're all in support, okay? I'll just go through then. Helen Cox from Kauai Climate Action Coalition. Chris Caulfield from Coalition Earth. Melody Aduha from the Environmental Caucus of the Democratic Party. Robert Emery, co-chair of the Green Party. And also the following individuals: Tamara Hayden, Harvey Arkin. If I call your name and you're here and you'd like to testify, please step forward. Michelle Nihipali, Jacob Owenick, Carolyn Azelski, Jordan Smith, Donna Fisher, Barbara Best, David Durazo, Ron Riley, Daniela Escontrella, Carolyn Kunitake, Diane Ware, Uilani Naipo, Tom DeGrazia, Nicole Tergio-Glau, Kenneth Peck, Keone Shizuma, Georgia Hoops, Jacqueline Ambrose, Kevin Facenda, Miss T, Victoria Anderson, Shannon Matson, John Brodziak, Dylan Okihiro, Leda Vorm, Lana Brodziak, Tori Kinoshita, Susan Gorman Chang, John Kawamoto, Douglas Perrine, Nanea Lowe. Anyone else wishing to provide lay testimony? Hearing none. Members, are there any questions?
I do have a question, but I don't know if anybody was here that would be able to answer.
Give it a try, Senator Rhodes.
So the Navahina case that was settled in the last few months relied on our constitutional provisions on protecting the environment. Will this additional protection or this parallel protection maybe change the kinds of lawsuits that can be brought against the state?
The AG is still here, right? AG's office? State your name again, please, Lyle.
My name's Lyle, Deputy Attorney General. I would have to take that question back and think about it. I am not fully versed on all the aspects of that settlement agreement, but I will be in touch and get you
I
up.
appreciate it, because it's because it looked to me like the court pretty clearly relied on our I'm not saying that we shouldn't do this, it's my bill, but, but I am curious what the interplay between Navahine and this would be.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
And I have a question for you, Lyle. So the goal of the Green Amendment is to ensure people's rights to clean air, water, and the environment. So can you provide an example of how this would complicate environmental enforcement efforts? You had mentioned something about how there are future challenges for, right?
So the current right to a healthy environment defines the healthy environment with respect to laws of environmental quality. So if you have a water standard or an air standard, and I said, okay, this is certain parts per billion of this pollutant is the limit, can't exceed that. That would constitute a violation beyond that. So it creates sort of a framework for the existing law, creates sort of a framework for what is a healthy environment, where this expands upon that without really setting a parameter. I think that's basically that.
Okay. Thank you, Lyle.
Thank you.
Question?
Thank you. So if the measure is passed, what might happen if the state cannot meet the clean water and air requirement? Or for someone to contend that the state is not protecting the environment and our native ecosystem and beaches?
Yeah, so this, that is, as you pointed out, very broad language. So it would be subject to interpretation by the courts, and it may come out with novel interpretations that it's sort of speculative to consider all of the consequences, going forward. But it is very broad, and that may be a state liability issue.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Chair.
Senator Richards?
All this is a constitutional law.
Yeah.
I think my concern is, like you said, we have anytime we mess with the Constitution, I get concerned. Conceptually, I agree with what's going on here, but then when we apply the Constitution, how is the interpretation going to go? And does this potentially leave us open by opinion of what is clean air, and just take air, for instance, clean air or clean water? Because we have it in statute what is theoretically clean air, but if it's a constitutional guarantee and someone doesn't believe that parts per billion is clean, that's where I start getting concerned, because conceptually I agree. I think we all agree with that. I'm just wondering how the application of law, and that's where you say, I think you responded to Senator Rhodes on that one, is that?
So the, again, the existing right to a healthy environment, it does specify that that a healthy environment is defined by laws of environmental quality. So I think that the existing constitutional provision addresses that. So this would expand upon that in ways that maybe are unforeseeable.
Okay, all right, thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Lyle.
So Chair, since we're going down that.
Sure.
But what if our current standards are, we've learned things over the years that indicate that what we thought were acceptable levels of certain substances turned out to be really bad for you. So why, so it's a sort of a two-part question. So why shouldn't we have a protection that actually protects us from, that covers stuff that where the legislature didn't know really what the answer should be at that time? And then going along with that isn't it just a fact question? I mean, if you have 1 trillion parts per million of carbon in the atmosphere, everybody would say, well, actually, that would cause lots of other trouble as a bad example. I don't know. Hexavalent chromium is a nasty substance. If you had 1 part per trillion, I'm almost sure that would be fine, but it would really be a fact question that the courts would just have to figure out, okay, what is clean in this regard for this particular substance? Isn't that just something courts do all the time?
Certainly, I think that could be, yeah, and it would be subject to, future litigation, but maybe the more certain way to handle it would be standard by standard. And so if, there is a, say, a particular pollutant I'm not familiar with the one that you mentioned, but, and it's a, a healthy standard over time would be more stringent. Perhaps it's better to look at that particular pollutant where the standard is. Maybe it's in the rule, maybe the rule can be revised, maybe, and that might help to kind of, limit it to that particular provision that where the concern is.
Okay, impossible to predict what the concerns are going to be, but thanks, Chair. I know you have a long agenda, so I'll stop.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to the next measure. SB 552 relating to agriculture requires the Department of Ag to establish a healthy soils program, requires an annual report to the legislature, appropriates funds. First up is Leah Laramie from Climate Change Commission.
Hello, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Leah Laramie with the Climate Change Commission. We stand on our testimony in support and are available for any questions of how this interacts with our Carbon Smart Land Management Program. Mahalo.
Thank you, Leah. Sharon Hurd, Department of Ag.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Sharon Hurd, Department of Agriculture. The department stands on our submitted testimony, but wants to highlight that if the bill passes, we would certainly take this on. But the recommendation that we have is that there are existing commissions that have this as their duty, including the Greenhouse Gas Sequestration Task Force established in 2018 that is charged with addressing these numerous objectives. And further, SB 552 appears to be duplicative of the objectives of the 3-year Hawaii Carbon Smart Land Management Assistant Pilot Program. So if you could consider those two options before assigning a new task force to the department, that would be the recommendation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ryan Miyamoto from the Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair. The Hawaii Farm Bureau is down on its written testimony and support.
Thank you. Hunter Hevelin, Hawaii Farmers Union.
Thank you, Chair. Hunter Hevelin, Advocacy Director with Hawaii Farmers Union, here testifying in support of this measure and offering a few perspectives. The Hawaii Farmers Union has advocated for a healthy soils program within our Department of Agriculture for the better part of the last half decade, at least, to the point of even reaching passage and movement into an act. And due to confusion around the bill and its structure, then Governor Ige actually vetoed the bill because there was concern around it overlapping with a program that Leah runs and another study that I actually ended up doing for the Office of Planning. The intent of this effort is to bring together a variety of support programs to facilitate the adoption of conservation agricultural practices that have known benefits to environmental quality and that support continued agricultural productivity. The National Resource Conservation Service has outlined many of these practices, and the selections that we've advocated for in previous years, namely a cover crop pilot program and the now permanent compost reimbursement program, were selected based off of the adoption of practices by producers across the state. The goal of this program is to bring all of these efforts under one umbrella as a healthy soils program. Some of them already exist in other pockets of the Department of Agriculture, and we've advocated for a number of years to bring them together as one entity. This has issues for producers year over year. As the compost program, for example, has moved between different divisions of the Department of Ag, the outreach thus now requires a producer to know which part of the Department of Agriculture's website to go to get critical information, and has also changed the type of information that has been made available. Because of this and the continued reticence by the department, I would offer up as a potential, maybe the Agribusiness Development Corporation would rather take this program and the programs that would be housed under it, conceivably the compost reimbursement program and its attendant funding, to ensure that these resources and others like it could be pursued and properly distributed to producers. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Hunter. You know what question's coming up for ADC. Just giving you some warning, okay? Kohara Bandera from Kanalani Ohana Farm. In support, Jeanette Garoom from the Women Organizing for Change in Ag and Natural Resource Management. In support, So 45 in support and 0 opposed to this bill. So these are all in support?
Chair.
Yes.
Someone's online here.
Oh, okay. I haven't got to Nicole yet. She's online. She's coming up. Ted Boland, Climate Protectors. Susan Roberts Emery from the Green Party of Hawaii in support. Nicole Galassi, online. Nicole?
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Nicole Galassi on behalf of the Hawaii Cattlemen's Council. We stand on our testimony in support and encourage this to be incentive-based, which has been successful, such as with those federal programs that are currently in place. A question that did come up from one of our members is regarding the deadlines by which a plan for all state lands leased for ag use is required. Will this impact existing leases or just new leases granted? We have concerns about how this will actually take place for existing leases because they already have provisions in place that the lessee needs to meet. Thank you so much for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Nicole. And Frederick from HAPA, Hawaii Alliance for Progressive Action, in support. And as I said, all the following are in support: Sven Sorge, Nalani, Georgia Hoops, Amelia Briscoe, Sophia Gravel, B.A. McClintock, Paul Bernstein from the Citizens Climate Lobby, Ann Dorsey, Michelle Mihipali, Bert Faruta, Kevin Facenda, Troy Schott, L. Osterer, Noel Lindemann, Samantha Preyes, Stacy Alapai, Teresa Thompson, Hina Kanonigo, Kialakai Hammond, Dylan Ramos, Noel Bali, Katrina Ahia, Shay Hodges, Jennifer Shiwa, Isis Usborn, Deborah Javar, Eliel Starbright, Kimo Donheon, Norris Tomlinson, Leila Kalama, Val Herzog, Lori Makaneole, Terry Savainaea, Alisa Keila Paahana, and Keala Fong. Anyone else present or online that would like to testify? Hearing none. Members, any questions? No questions? I have a question for ADC.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair. I'm Wendy Gady with the Agribusiness Development Corp. And we would stand in strong support of either the Department of Ag or ADC carrying out this program. One of the things that I think is essential is for us to tie the business aspect and the impact to profitability for the farmer, and that is a missing component. Just having healthy soils is great, but if we can quantify it, it's even better.
Great.
I'm here for any questions.
Thank you. Yes.
Department of Ag, please.
Senator?
Director, what kind of program do you guys actually have today that encompasses what Hunter had just alluded to?
Well, good question. The department programs actually are in reaction or in support of whatever the ledge comes through, such as the compost reimbursement program, which invigorates the soil to be in a healthy way, and that there's no microorganisms or CRB in it. But what our more vital role, I think, is in awarding the groups like Go Farm, funding the University of Hawaii research. We award them the funding that we get and entertain the proposals that would meet these requirements. And then we would award it to the most innovative, most impactful proposal. Within our own group, we really don't do too much education. We're mostly regulatory for healthy soils, just to be sure that for instance, with the pesticides that are being used aren't impacting the soils in a negative way. It's more of a regulatory, but for the purposes of this bill, with the funding that we would be receiving, should there be funding, we would defer to the experts through an RP program or some sort of program that meets the needs of this particular bill.
So you believe the program is warranted, which I think is what we talked about before, was bringing them all together, so that way the farmer or the rancher in their own right had someplace to can just one-stop shop.
I remember that, right. The question you had then was, are you saying the farmers don't know what healthy soils is, as I recall?
No. What I'm saying is that to encompass all of the different areas of, whether it be soil, soil health, you support this?
We support it.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to the next measure is SB 678 relating to ag, establishes the Agricultural Development and Food Security Special Fund, requires a portion of the environmental response, energy, and food security tax to be deposited into the special fund, and appropriates funds for the Department of Ag in an amount equal to 3% of the state budget. First up, Department of Ag. Chair Hurd.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Sharon Hurd, Department of Ag. The department is in strong support of this bill. The list of how the monies in the special fund may be expended align with the department's goals to buy, invest, and grow in agriculture and support Hawaii farmers and ranchers. The bill will provide the resources the department needs to serve as the change agent for agricultural operations. We will submit to the legislature, as required by the bill, no later than 20 days prior, detailing the expenditures of the bill. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Gary Suganuma, DOTAX. Comments, thank you. Luis Salaveria from DBED, I'm sorry, Department of Budget and Finance. Comments? Travis Moon, Attorney General's Office.
Good afternoon, Deputy Attorney General Travis Moon. We provided written comments previously on a grant standard issue and a special fund issue. I'm here for any questions if you have. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Yamachika from the Tax Foundation of Hawaii.
Good afternoon, Chairs, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Tom Yamachika from Tax Foundation of Hawaii. We generally concur with the observations of the Department of Budget and Finance that the proposed special fund does not meet the established criteria in Section 37-52.3. So we have some concerns, and that's basically our concern about this this new special fund. I'd be happy to answer your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tom. And Mr. Salaveria, testify.
Sorry for being late.
That's okay.
Louis Salaveria, Department of Budget and Finance. I'll stand on our written testimony providing comment. Sure, be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Next is Hunter Hevelin, Hawaii Farmers Union.
Thank you, Chair. I'll stand on our written testimony in support and highlight our request for an amendment to add the provision for funds to be used for sourcing of local products and their distribution of business.
Okay, thank you. Brian Miyamoto, Hawaii Farmers Bureau.
Afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. I'm Brian Miyamoto on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. You have a written testimony in support. I'd just like to highlight a few things that I didn't include in our testimony. When the bell tax was being proposed, Hawaii Farm Bureau, we normally oppose any additional taxes that would increase costs and expenses to farmers and ranchers. However, we did support this particular tax because of the direct impact to agriculture. Unfortunately, in 2021, our special fund was repealed, so we're glad that there's a consideration from the legislature to reenact, reestablish, or establish the special fund. The uses are pretty broad, and you heard the chair talk about the uses that the special fund can be utilized for. We'd like to add additional use, specifically for biosecurity. Although it does state in, on page 3, any other activity, however, we'd like to see biosecurity as a use for the special fund with the biosecurity emergency that we're in. Other than that, we appreciate the consideration of the legislature to reenact the special fund. The tax was for agriculture, and it should be used for agriculture as part of that tax. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Nicole Galassi, Hawaii Cattlemen's Council.
Thank you. Nicole Galassi on behalf of the Hawaii Cattlemen's Council will stand on our testimony in support. Mahalo.
Thank you. Lauren Zerbel from Hawaii Food Industry Association. In support, John Kawamoto, I'm sorry.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. I'm Alexis Chapman on behalf of HFIA. We're happy to stand on our testimony in support, and I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. John Kawamoto in support, Teresa Thompson in support, Paul Bernstein in support. Anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? We have 8 in support and 4 with comments. Members, any questions?
Chair, I got one.
Okay.
Budget and finance, please.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair. Chair Louis Silveira, Budget and Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Silveira. Question I had, and maybe it's my math. I support and I agree with people are saying, but the 3% of the state budget, that's $250 million, which is,
Would represent a 1,000% increase to the Department of Agriculture's budget, yes.
okay. Okay.
Yes.
So my math was accurate, so then, thank you. Department of Ag,
Senator?
thanks, Chair. Could you even implement that?
Oh. Good question based on the recent press. As long as we have the encumbrance or the process through to the end of the year, we can encumber, we can ask the Department of Attorney General, DAG's Department of Accounting and General Services, to do a blanket encumbrance. But if we would do,
I didn't ask about encumbrance.
okay, it's going to be tough, but if we do RFPs and if we find a vehicle to get the money out there to the people that really need it through the Ag Fund, we can try. Never had 250 million, we had 10 million, and it's going to be a stretch, but perhaps the bill can allow, instead of just a one-year fiscal year expenditure, perhaps the bill can allow for a longer time. HRS, I think it's 4-90 says you can have up to 5 years. It's the allowable length of time for an appropriation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Sure. Chair.
Senator?
So I think what Senator Richards is alluding to, with the imminent need for agriculture, 5 years ain't gonna cut it for me. We had problems with moving funds, even under biosecurity. Do you have the manpower and the staff to do it? You see, our challenges
I do
right
know
now,
the
invasive species has been at the forefront. Do you have that capacity, staff-wise?
In 5 years, I'm
talking in 1
1
year.
year?
The
Well-
budget that you have now, can you execute the budget that you have? And if this is to come into play, and do you have a plan, a master plan in motion for agriculture for the department?
We do. Right now, the challenge is filling the positions, but we do have a plan for that. If we cannot fill the positions, all 44, I think was about 1.7, about $2 million, we're coming back to WAM and Finn and asking if we can redirect these funds to maybe, I have an idea for outreach, public outreach, do a public service campaign, which we all know that funding was cut. We decided not to cut it. So while we cannot get the positions filled, we may not have the capacity, but we will use the funds to attract capacity. We can direct those funds to other purposes for biosecurity. So I'm going to say that confident that we can do the 10 million. If the stretch is for the 250, it's going to take a longer time.
Okay, so if this bill passes, how much would you project will go into the agriculture development and food security special fund? And to what extent do you already expend funds on the activities already in this bill?
We don't have the funding for that particular, the 10 things that are on there. The barrel tax was taken, but I believe in the barrel tax, I don't think we can get $250 million because the source of the funding is the monies that are collected from the gas, the delivery of the gas and the fossil fuels, which those have considerably declined. So to say that it's to a maximum 3%, I believe that's what the bill says, Senators, and that equates to 250 million. That would be a magic wand, right? It would be difficult to say.
My question was, to what extent do you already expend these funds on these activities already? Funds that you already have, to what extent have you expended down?
Okay, so you mean from the 55 million that we have currently? The 10 million for sure, and probably another 3, so about 13 million.
13 million out of the 50.
Or plus the 10 from Act 231. The 55 was our standard operating, year after year, and then thanks to the gift was the 231 for 10. So I've added about 3 million and thrown it in there.
And then how much of that you looking at using towards biosecurity?
Of
the rest of that funds?
The 55?
Yeah.
Oh, that goes for personnel and the other, so if you target, it pays for salaries for biosecurity, so I guess that would be.
But I'm looking at the actual activity of biosecurity. In other words, you have coconut rhinoceros beetles, you have coqui frog issues, we're dealing with avian influenza. Till today, there's still no eggs in Walmart and Costco. Like, to what extent are we doing biosecurity?
I would have to come back to you with the exact, but my estimate is 13 million.
Okay, can you come back with us on that breakout? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Next is SB 693 relating to Food Hub Pilot Program, appropriating funds for the continued implementation of the Food Hub Pilot Program. First up, Department of Ag.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Sharon Hurd, Department of Agriculture. The Department of Agriculture supports the initiative. We recognize that food hubs are a vital link in the supply chain. They provide the middle of the supply chain type distribution from the farm to the consumer. It helps, the food hubs help the small farmers by aggregating from the area, and they take care of the delivery and the marketing. So it's a very vital piece of the supply chain. The under Act 2313 back in 2022, the result of that funding was 1.5 million. Thank you very much. What happened with that funding is we awarded 6 contracts to food hubs in the state, 6 of 14. So there's 14 food hubs in the state. Of that funding, we received, on that opportunity, I should say, we received 27 proposals. So there are 21 other food hubs out there that have submitted proposals looking for funding for their particular projects. The results of the Act 313, we got one final report in so far. That was from adaptations on the Big Island. I'll be happy to share that report with you. The results are really good. They added 15 new farmers to the hub. They increased their sales to a local hospital by 50%. And they report total annual sales from the food hub operations as 2.5 million. I can ask what what it was prior to that. I didn't take the time to do that for this meeting, but I'm curious as to see what the sales were previous to the food hub. So the takeaway for me is that this bill, if passed, would allow the department to consider another RFP, allowing the 21 proposals that were not funded in Act 313 have an opportunity to be as successful as the other 6 that were.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hunter Hevelin, Hawai'i Farmers Union.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Hunter Hevelin, still here with Hawai'i Farmers Union. We'll stand on want to highlight from our written testimony and following up on some of the comments of the Chair. This program supports a large variety of producers, from small farmers to some of the largest farm operations, have routed their production through market outlets that are commonly known as food hubs. But of greater importance is, of additional importance, is the value of these operations to supporting local families, and particularly families receiving SNAP benefits to access fresh local food. In 2023, the most recent year for which there is data collected by the Hawaii Food Hub Hui annually, $1.6 million of local produce was routed to SNAP recipient families through food hubs. And I work with that network, and I'm confident that that number is likely expanded in 2024. So this subsidy for these operations extends far beyond the farmers that they support, but also families across the state. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Brian Miyamoto, Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. I'm going to play tag team with the Department of Ag and Farmers Union. So we'd like to also add this will support, again, it does support the small farmers, provides them access to many markets, such as, in addition, our Farm to School program, our Farm to State program, our Farm to Families, or previously known as our Farm to Food Bank. We're trying to grow agriculture. We need more production. This will help our small farmers primarily with the aggregation and the distribution and the food safety, all the things that are necessary to enter into many of the markets that small farmers do not have access to currently right now. So we are in strong support of the Food Hub program, and we'd like to see continued funding. And we need the supply for all of these programs and all of these goals that we have set for agriculture. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Ramsey Brown from Pono Pacific Land Management. In total, we have 36 in support, 0 opposed, 0 comments. I'll just go through the list. If anyone would like to testify, please step forward. Eric Abe from the Hawaii Primary Care Association. Ann Frederick from the HAPA. Ted Boland, Climate Protectors Hawaii. Susan Roberts Emery from the Green Party of Hawaii. And these individuals, Noel Bali, Katrina Ahia, Shay Chan Hodges, Jennifer Chiwa, Isis Osborne, Deborah Javar, Elio Starbright, Kim Dong-hyun, Norris Tomlinson, Leila Kalama, Val Herzog, Lori Makaneole, Terry Inaea, Alyssa, Keila Pa'ahana, and Keala Fong. Anyone else wishing to testify? Members, any questions?
Quick question.
Senator DeCoy?
Department of Ag. Director, thank you for that testimony. Can you also give us the breakout of all food hubs in the state? And then what those food hubs or which farms those food hubs are working with?
Sure.
And then the amount of revenue that is being brought in.
Okay, they do have an infographic. I'll send that over
Yeah,
to you.
that'll be
But I
super
think the one thing that they may not have is the customers that they're working with. Is that what you said?
No need the customer, just looking on the annual sales.
Annual
and then,
sales.
and then just the amount of farms per hub.
Farms per
No need the names, I just need the,
Okay.
thank you.
You're
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Moving on to the next measure, SB 496, relating to ag, requiring the Board of Ag to define the terms bona fide farmer and bona fide agricultural activity. And let's see, first up is Wendy Gady from the ADC.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. We stand on a written testimony and very strong support and available for questions.
Thank you, Wendy. Sharon Hurd, Department of Ag.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, department also stands by our submitted testimony with comments.
Brian Miyamoto, Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. You have our written testimony and support. This is a difficult topic. I think we've tried over years to try to define bona fide farmer, bona fide agriculture activities, so we're glad that this is being taken up by the legislature. We do, I wouldn't say concerns, but the bill does say that the Board of Agriculture shall draft the definition, or the definitions, which is fine. We just want to make sure that there are stakeholders that will be able to provide input to the board in order to come up with the best definition. We know there's current definitions. We want some consistency in statutes. We want to make sure that the policies and programs of the legislature and even the counties put forward for bona fide agriculture, bona fide farmers exists. So again, we are supportive of this. We're actually in strong support. We think it's about time. There are multiple definitions, but nothing really concrete or consistent that we should have at the state and county level to define bona fide agriculture and bona fide agricultural activity. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Brian. Hunter Hevelin, Hawaii Farmers Union.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members. Farmers Union stands in support of this measure and would like to highlight the potential concern we addressed in our written testimony, namely that there are a variety of forms of agriculture that I think the state would like to and maybe even has an onus to support, namely Native Hawaiian production systems that may not be market-based. We have a variety of homesteads and community-based farming that occurs that may not meet this threshold. And so I think it would be important in the development of this to be considering of those factors, as well as to see all of the places within policy, within law, where bona fide is used as a definition. Because we do not want to preclude producers that may not be as focused on commerce as they are on community to be excluded from certain state programs. Additionally, I would offer up that approach that's taken in other states, namely, I believe Vermont, actually has a registration program. So for you to participate in any of the variety of benefits that come from being an agricultural producer in that state, you must be registered. And I can speak for at least a portion of my membership that is not in favor of that as an approach. That being said, it makes it a lot easier for the administration of a variety of programs. If a Department of Agriculture knew that you were actually around, they could route, say, Healthy Soils Programs grants, or administer communications to, say, a county agency for the tax benefits that come from dedicated agricultural land uses. So I'll offer that up as another provision, conceivably for inclusion. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Hunter. Nathan Trump for Island Harvest. Nicole in support. There were 8 in support, 0 opposed, with 1 comment. Nicole Galassi, Hawaii Cattlemen's Council.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Nicole Galassi on behalf of the Hawaii Cattlemen's Council. I'll stand on our written testimony as support. As like it was said earlier, clarification on what a bona fide agriculture is going to help us ensure that programs that are meant for agriculture are properly directed. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Nicole. And Jade Ashman, Ken Kajihara, and David Fuertes also in support. Anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? Members, any questions?
Questions?
Senator Richards.
Department of Ag, Chair. Assuming this passes, how do you envision this going forward, since you'd be charged to come up with the definition?
Yeah, according to our planner, the best way to approach it is to align the county definitions and the state definitions to try to have alignment so that there's no conflict between a bona fide farmer definition in one section of the laws and another. The difficulty is sometimes a bona fide farmer is a new farmer. And some of the requirements that might be needed for a new farmer would be historical records for taxes and experiences. But if you have a farmer that suddenly decides, I'm retired, I'm going to decide to become a farmer, and would be bereft of the benefits afforded to a bona fide farmer because they lack a part of the definition. So that's one of the considerations in the planning department. It should be more revenue driven. It should be more, what is the potential for the revenue, as well as, experience in the past. It's going to be a tough definition to come up with.
Which is why we're charged in doing this. And part of the reason to do this is to start the conversation about it. Counties have struggled with it, and this is an opportunity to not go and gather all the different counties' ordinances and try to shove them together. It's the other way around. Figure out what truly bona fide agriculture is, and then see how that trickles down the other way. Some comments have been made about, I'll use the term subsistence farming. I don't mean it in that sense, but there are people that raise food for the family. They are bona fide agriculture, but there's no tax records to prove that. We have cultural practices, same deal, lo'is. And so my vision of this coming forth would be that DOA takes this and crafts an unjaded opinion of what agriculture is, not paying attention to the county. And that's what I'm seeing. And this is a conversation seeking the input from industry. And so I appreciate what you're saying, Chair. I think this is a time we could start fresh. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Chair, if I can follow up. So Director, what do you consider a bona fide farmer?
The easy answer is to go with the federal definition, so as to be consistent with the federal, which is revenue and the potential of revenue of $1,000 per year. That's what they consider the bona fide farmer. So if we start from there, and then we craft it to what Senator Richards said, is unjaded, and we go from there, what specifically applies for Hawaii. Because to the point, some people, I shouldn't say some people, there might be the option of an immigrant farmer from, another country starting with all the experience of being a farmer, but they may not be $1,000 per year. They might not be able to prove their threshold. So my opinion of a bona fide farmer, I would start with the federal definition, because like I said, it's the easy way to start, and then move from there in a discussion, taking into account, I'm going to use your word, the unjaded aspects of a local subsistence farmer, a neighborhood farmer that has 2 cows, and then would qualify for the federal standard, but we would have to start somewhere.
So you would also, can you also identify within there, because you got farmer, bona fide farmer, you got subsistence farming, you got gardener. At what point, because I think our challenge have been within our county, was that you would have to prove $25,000 in GE. And our biggest challenge was they would fill out the GE for $25,000 so they could designate it as an ag lot, which is why we had all the gentlemen. Would you guys also be able to identify that portion? Because it then became, they went after the water. And nobody went to check. So in other words, it's never spot check, filed it, and it was claimed as a bona fide farmer. How would you be able to now look, or at least enforce it, and then identify? Because I know you guys already have a challenge with identifying who's farming on your lots and what they're farming.
I'm going to go with the revenue piece again. As USDA does, they go with the revenue or the potential revenue. And in my opinion, it doesn't have to be food. It can be farming revenue from forest, fuel, fiber, flowers.
Do you have the potential to site check those areas for that? In other words, not just take their word for it.
I would leave it to the responsibility of the applicant who's trying to apply to be considered a bona fide farmer. They would be required to submit the documents. If they're required to submit revenues of X number of dollars, whether it be $25,000, we would ask that they would provide those documents to be considered a bona fide farmer.
The documents is easy to provide. It's the site inspection I'm concerned about.
We would have to do a spot inspection because we have 6,500 farms in the state. That's a lot of farms to have to inspect, but we would do a spot check. 10% of all the farms in a certain region, farms of a certain size. We can do it.
So let me clarify that. Of that 7,000, I know till today you guys have not spot checked all 7,000.
True, I'll say yes.
So my question is, how do you plan on doing that to now define bona fide farmer?
Would have to, I would have to come up with the program, but let's say it's 6,500 farms. We would say we're going to check those that are in the $50,000 to $75,000 range. And then we would check that, 10% of those. Out of the ones that are between 10 and 25,000, we would check 25% of those. Most of the farms in the state are under $25,000. They're small farms. So maybe we would target them because they would be the ones to most likely try to qualify.
So I would just say this, as my last comment. If you're gonna do it, you should do it for all, to make it a fair assessment.
All 6,500?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Moving on to next measure is SB 688 relating to agriculture, appropriates funds to establish grant specialist positions within the Department of Ag. First up, Department of Ag. We're giving you a little exercise.
I know,
here.
12 of them today, 12 of them today. Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, this is an important bill to the Department of Agriculture, and we support it. The reason it's important is because there is a disconnect between the opportunities, the funding opportunities offered from every entity, from federal, state, county, private, philanthropy, connecting these opportunities to the targeted recipient. And these grant specialists would help make that connection. We do have a 89-day hire into the grant writer position that was afforded last session, T-funded. And she has applied for a $500,000 grant for the regional kitchen. Let's say we get it, right? She will not have the capability to focus on the 12 other grants that she's looking at, applying for, and also keep an eye on administering and managing the grant that comes in the door. These grant specialists would take it from there, and they would make the connections, they would draw down the funds. So the grant specialists actually implement the funding opportunities after the grant specialist has made the link.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you. Brian Miyamoto, Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. You have our written testimony support. I think you heard the chair talk about our current grant writer and the dividends that we believe that position is already paying. We'd like to see positions. We'd like to see permanent positions within the Department of Agriculture. And if I may, Chair, on the previous measure and previous measures, when we're talking about funding and different things, surveying 6,500 farms, I believe Senator Richards' math might land 3%, $250 million. We can use that for all of the funding, all of the resources that we need for agriculture. As we go through this session, you'll continue to hear all of the needs. So again, 250 million sounds like a lot. It's not. Agriculture is that important. And this position in particular, bringing in federal dollars, which we do want to leverage using state resources. So we're in strong support, not just the current position, which is 89-day hire and privately funded, but permanent positions within the Department of Agriculture so that we can access more federal dollars to support our farmers and ranchers here in the state of Hawaii. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Mariah Yoshizu, Ulupono Initiative.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Mariah Yoshizu on behalf of the Ulupono Initiative. Ulupono stands in strong support of this bill. A preliminary search of 2025 federal funding opportunities identified more than 22 million federal funding opportunities for the state. So combining that with the 6 million in recurring grants that the department currently manages, that's almost 30 million to bring into the state for this next year. So strengthening this capacity, and as Brian said, making them permanent positions in the department will help to secure and administer this grant funding and help uplift our agriculture industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Mariah. Hunter Heveland, Hawaii Farmers Union.
Chair, Hawaii Farmers Union stands in strong support of this measure.
Thank you, Hunter. Nicole Galassi, Cattlemen's Council.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Nicole Galassi on behalf of the Hawaii Cattlemen's Council. We stand on our written testimony in support. Our member ranchers definitely need assistance on these grant applications. They're often really complicated. So this technical support is going to directly help farmers and ranchers, but then it'll also help us to better use these federal funds and keep those funds coming to Hawaii because we can show that they're needed here. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicole. Teresa Thompson. In support, anyone else wishing to testify? On SB 688, we have 6 in support, 0 opposed, 0 comments. Members, any questions?
Yeah, actually.
Yes, Senator Waugh?
How much will the salaries of the positions be? Do we know, Sharon?
Senator, could you repeat that for me?
What is the salary? Is there a range for the
It would
positions?
probably be an SR 24, starting about 75.
Okay.
Okay, but I did want to add that some of the positions, I forgot to say this, is the pipeline for a grant involves a lot of fiscal responsibilities. Right now, our fiscal is struggling to manage the micro grants for food security. That was 560 contracts. Because they are considered income at this time of the year, we have to do a 1099 for each one of those. So it's the pipeline for a grant is not just to secure it, but we need the positions to then process all the way to the closing. So the positions would be doing some of the fiscal operations as well. One of them could be a manager. A manager would be an EM position starting about 90, maybe to 100. But if we get those three positions, it'll open up a whole door of opportunity for receiving funding.
Are you guys able to hire those positions? Like the last time
Yeah,
I
I
was
know.
inspectors, we couldn't
Good
hire.
question. We do have the 89-day option, and with considering an emergency proclamation to waive the recruitment process and help, ask DHER to give us some authority to hire outright. I didn't prep DHER for this testimony, so this is coming as a surprise to them, but we could always do an emergency proclamation to waive some of the processes and fill quickly.
Okay,
We know they're out there.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you. Next measure. SB 245 relating to ownership of ag lands beginning January 1st, 2026 prohibits certain entities from owning, purchasing, or acquiring ownership of agricultural lands. First up, Wendy Gady from ADC.
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Wendy Gady with the Agribusiness Development Corp. While we support this bill, we also are providing some comments. And one of the things that's interesting for me to have watched over the last 20 years is how some of the larger entities have helped some of the small farmers get started. And it was a privilege to open the Hawaii Ag Foundation, 200 acres in Kunia, and to see one of the big three come in and clear the land, which is about $20,000 an acre, put in the irrigation system, put in lime, put in charcoal, was a massive savings to these farmers. So what ended up happening is the first harvest was within 6 months, which is pretty incredible. In the case of one of the entities on Kauai, they've really worked with one of the taro growers with technical support. And as a result, he is a successful applicant and receiving a big chunk of land from ADC. And so I think, the spirit is there, but I think it begs some bigger questions in regards to how do the large, medium, and small coexist. And I think it also begs including the concept of CPR, what that means, and how that's enforced. So I'm available for any other questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Wendy. Sharon Hurd, Department of Ag.
Department stands on our submitted written testimony. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian Miyamoto, Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. Farm Bureau provides comments to this measure. We do share the legislature's commitment, and we do want farmers on farm land. However, we do have concerns regarding the potential unintended consequences of this measure, which I did highlight in our testimony. I will talk about a few. One, something we just talked about, bona fide farmers. There's a definition of bona fide farmers in here, but it would require further clarification as discussed in the previous bona fide farming bill. We do not have a definition for bona fide farmers. Also, potential barriers for agriculture cooperatives. Agriculture cooperatives, which often operate as corporations or partnerships, play a vital role in supporting local farmers through chair resources, marketing, and distribution. The restriction in this bill may create unnecessary barriers for these cooperatives, undermining their ability to serve Hawaii's farming community. It's also some unclear definition exemptions. Again, the definition of bona fide farm families, which are exempted. It's one of the exemptions. Also, the bill exempts entities that are owned or acquired land before January 1st, 2026, so grandfathering folks in there, but it's unclear how it's applied to transfers or reorganizations within the same entity. Example, a farm family transferring ownership to the next generation within a corporate structure. Also, lease agricultural lands. Many farmers rely on lease agreements with entities such as trusts, corporations, or partnerships to access the farmland. Restricting these entities from owning or leasing agricultural lands could unintentionally reduce the availability of farm land or for active farming. Again, we're just concerned with the unintended consequences that legislation may have on our ability to farm and ranch here in the state of Hawaii. We do support efforts to preserve Hawaii's ag land for farmers. You heard Farm Bureau say farmland, agricultural land's primary use needs to be agriculture production. So again, thank you for the opportunity to provide comments on this measure. Aloha.
Thank you, Brian. Hunter Hevelin, Hawaii Farmers Union.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, committee members, Hunter Hevelin, Advocacy Director with Hawaii Farmers Union. We stand in support of this measure as an effort to redress some of the tectonic shifts that we're seeing in Hawaii's agricultural markets. While the notion has long been held that we need to increase agricultural output, recently we've been hearing a lot about the suggestion that we support all forms of agriculture and all scales of agriculture. And while Hawaii Farmers Union believes that it is necessary to have a diverse agricultural industry, the effects of certain agricultural operations on agricultural markets overall cannot be ignored. For example, when an investment, namely one that could be from another country's pension fund or a corporation based on the mainland, comes into our islands at an order of magnitude scale larger than all of our mid-sized farms put together, they are pursuing a monopolistic control of our markets. And the cost of that is not really borne by small family farm operations. It is the mid-size to large-size farm operations here in the islands who are imperiled by their presence. So we view this measure as one that is a reasonable approach, as many other states have already pursued, to ensure that agriculture is maintained as a local industry. And we've offered a variety of recommendations to modify this bill language to ensure that the carve-outs necessary to support a variety of existing legal structures are available to producers in Hawaii. Exemptions that should say, you can be an LLC, you can be a corporation, you could be a cooperative, so long as your members and your beneficiaries are living here and are agricultural operations. We're happy to provide additional answers should you have any questions. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Hunter. Lauren Zerbel from Hawaii Food Industry Association.
Good afternoon again, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Alexis Chapman for HFIA. We stand on our written comments echoing some of the same points as the Farm Bureau, and I'm available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeanette Gurung from the Women Organizing for Change in Agriculture and Natural Resource Management. In support, Susan Roberts Emery, Green Party of Hawaii. In support, Ann Frederick for HAPA. In support, Kim Dong-hyun has comments. David Arakawa from LERF, Land Use Research Foundation, opposed. Jacob Wiencheck is opposed. Juliana Davis, support. Nalani, in support. And yes, there are 38 in support and 2 opposed with 5 comments. The following are also all in support. And Malia Briscoe, B.A. McClintock, Georgia Hoops, Sophia Gravel, Terry Sevainea, Troy Schott, L. Osterer, Sven Sorge, Ann Dorsey, Noel Shaw, Michelle Nikitali, Jody, Deborah Javar, Jennifer Chiwa, Val Herzog, Katrina Ahia, Kaya Kahinali'i, Kananigo, Stacy Alapai, Isis Osborne, Noel Bali, Jacqueline Ambrose, Jirai Tehani Manasas, Shay Chan Hodges, Sean Chu, Walter Riddy, and Robert Bentz. Is Robert online?
He was here earlier, but unfortunately he left the
Okay.
meeting.
Okay. Emily Gambino, Dylan Ramos, Alexandra Urbina, Kealakai Hammond, Leila Kalama, and Keila Pa'ahana. Anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? Hearing none, members, any questions?
Chair.
Yes.
Hunter?
Pardon?
Got to identify
Oh,
yourself.
Hunter Hevelin, Advocacy Director with Hawai'i Farmers Union.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate your comments concerning intent. Am I hearing correctly that you support the adoption of all the different structures that might own agriculture, especially from a family side, because across the nation for 100 years, it's very common to have corporations, family corporations,
Certainly.
but corporations.
Yes, definitely in support of that. And in my written testimony, I'd offered up a variety of, I think that what I wrote in there was tailored exemptions, right? It's not about the legal structure itself. It's about the beneficiary structure. And I think ultimately, to some degree, about the controlling interest and the teleconnections that are the connections of that controlling interest and its potential dominance over our food system. So if we cede our local agricultural industries to, we'll be hearing a number of bills about foreign ownership, and I'll just use that as an example, then the investments held by those entities elsewhere become part of the logic of our local food marketplace, right? So if, for example, the majority of our production in eggs came from an entity that also was producing on the mainland, and there were significant losses in egg production there, our local food price could become a mechanism by which they maintain financial wholeness, by which they pursue continued profitability. And when we cede our industries through not ensuring proper governance over market controls, it opens us up to those futures. And at the same time, imperils what have, in some cases, in the egg industry being one in particular, century-old operations here.
Okay, and so, but using your same logic, if we had a crash here, outside could support that and keep them in business, using your same logic.
That's true. That's very true.
So which could be beneficial for us.
It's not any, it's all trade-offs.
Yes,
And I
okay.
definitely highlight, these large agricultural operations have significant opportunity at efficiencies of scale to, provide volumes of goods to, say, our Department of Education at a price point that may not be accessible based off of the current federal reimbursement rate for most small farmers.
Okay,
So it's all trade-offs.
It is, and it's trying to balance that and
Yeah.
find the synergy there. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Next is SB 387, relating to service animals, requires the Department of Ag to be responsible for all neighbor island inspection permit fees for service animals that are located in the state and are being transported for release at Kona, Kahului, or Lihui airports. Department of Ag?
Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Sharon Hurd, Department of Agriculture. This bill, we oppose this bill only because we don't have the permanent funding, dedicated funding that is provided for the purpose of this on an annual basis. It is true that,
So you had comments down and you changed from comments to opposed, is that correct?
well, it's the line above, therefore the department opposes this measure unless permanent dedicated funding is provided for the purpose with the following comments.
Okay.
That we do not have staff on the neighbor islands. And with the increase, the exponential increase, I don't have the numbers for you, but there's private jets now that fly directly into the neighbor islands. The financial capabilities of anyone that can have a private jet, they probably have a service animal or an animal. And I won't say that we cannot do it, but we do have the neighbor island import permit process. And that would allow it. Many of them do not know it, or they don't take advantage of the pre-permitting. I guess what I'm saying is, it's a good idea, and it can work. And service animals are vital to the companion that they service, but we do need more staff. We do need to have a dedicated funding source so that we can monitor this. It's for the health and safety of the consumers of Hawaii. Right? We can't have babies in here. So it's important, we believe it, but we need the funding to have staff on the neighbor islands. We do have a subject matter expert here for the more detailed answers on the veterinary facilities.
Thank you.
Okay?
Chair, quick question.
Oh, yeah.
And I won't hold you to this. What do you think it would cost to implement something like this?
Just one moment, sir.
Oh,
Ike has actually
Sorry.
done some,
did not see Dr. Maeda. Aloha, Ike.
Thank you, Chair. Vice Chair Isaac Maeda, Administrator, Animal Industry. Roughly, it varies because okay, let me start from the beginning. The Neighbor Island Inspection Permit is a permit that's issued by the department for dogs and cats to fly into Kona, Lihue, and Kahului. What happens is the AQS staff vets the animal on the health side, testing, vaccination, identification, make sure it's qualified to be airport release up until that point. And then the owner of the animal, if it's a pet or what have you, will go ahead and contract with a private vet facility on an outer island because the state doesn't have, the quarantine doesn't have positions out there. And what happens is that when they have the confirmation from that veterinarian that they're going to meet and inspect the animal on arrival, the state issues an NIIP or Neighbor Island Inspection Permit. The state does not charge service animal owners to issue the permit. However, the owner has to still contract with a private vet to do the inspection. So cost-wise, it varies because all of these private contractors have different fee schedules, and we don't control that. But it's estimated that if we're looking at maybe roughly 460 service animals to neighbor islands, and you're looking anywhere from maybe 180 on the low end to as high as 400 on the high end. It may be anywhere from 100,000 to 400,000, depending. The other thing to take into account is that service animal, the threshold to be deemed a service animal by ADA is not real stringent. So you can have, cases of fraudulent service animals. Difficult to define.
Thank you, Dr. Maeda. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, one other question, and that is, so if we were to put in the committee report in terms of funding, request for fund for HTOA, you'd be okay with that?
Yeah,
I'll defer.
as long as they're going to be a consistent annual funding for it.
Permanent
Yeah,
annual
right.
funding.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, quick question.
Senator Coy?
On the service animals, does a comfort animal fall under service animal?
Ooh, I think
No.
No?
No.
It doesn't?
No, it's only service animals actually have to be trained to perform a task for a disabled individual, and they require that, and it's only dog or in some instances miniature horses. But yeah, so comfort animals, which are emotional support animals, no, they don't qualify. The confusion occurs because there are a couple of, besides the ADA and service animals, the federal government also has the Air Carrier Act, which governs how they fly. And under that, guidelines for DOT is that emotional support animals, comfort animals can qualify. Same thing with the Fair Housing Act on that side. Comfort animals, emotional support animals, qualify for that housing and what have you.
Because I noticed they give the comfort animal the same vest as a service animal.
Yeah, the other thing is that there is no regulation as far as nationally on issuing any kind of information. In fact, there is no legal requirement to have to do that. So there's all these companies that you go online and you pay your fee, you get the vest, you get your paper or what have you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, moving on to the next measure is, sorry, we're in a time constraint here, yeah? We have a hard cutoff date, so I've got to get through this agenda. SB 328 relating to taxation, establishing an income tax credit for capital infrastructure costs incurred in the conversion of a dairy farm to a hog farm. First up, Dane Wicker from DBED.
Chair Diva stands on its written testimony and is available for comments, questions.
Thank you. Department of Ag, Sharon Hurd.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, we stand on our submitted testimony. Thank you.
In support, Wendy Gady, ADC.
Chair, Vice Chair, ADC stands in strong support.
Okay, Gary Suganuma, DOTAX.
Aloha, DOTAX stands on our written testimony comments.
Comments? Ryan Miyamoto, Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair. In observance of time, the Hawaii Farm Bill will stand on its written testimony in support.
Thank you. Tom Yamachika, Tax Foundation.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Tom Yamachika from Tax Foundation. Will stand on our written comments and be available for questions.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? Members, any questions? Moving on to SB 329, relating to water pollution, requires at least 50% of treatment works effluent to be R1 recycled water by January 1st, 2045, amends the year by which no treated or raw sewage shall be discharged into state waters. First up, Brian Nielsen from DLNR.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, member of the committee. DLNR stands on our written testimony providing comments appreciating the intent.
Thank you. Department of Health.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Department of Health, the department stands on its written testimony comments.
Comments? Wendy Gady, ADC.
Chair, Vice Chair, Wendy Gady, ADC, and we stand on our written testimony in support.
Thank you. Hunter Hevelin from Hawaii Farmers Union.
Thank you, Chair, we'll stand on our written testimony in support.
Thank you. Brian Miyamoto, Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair. The Hawaii Farm Bill will stand on its written testimony in support.
Thank you. Jacqueline Ambrose is in support. Anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? And members, any questions? Moving on, SB 681 relating to the general excise tax repeals the exemption to the general excise tax for agricultural businesses engaged in the production of genetically engineered agricultural products. First up, Department of Ag.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, the department stands on our submitted testimony with comments.
Thank you. DOTAX.
Aloha, Department of Tax stands on our written testimony with comments.
Thank you. Jimmy Tokioka from DBED.
Aloha, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Mark Ritchie from DBED, will stand on a written testimony offering comments.
Thank you. Brian Miyamoto, Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Brian Miyamoto here on behalf of the Hawaii Farm Bill. I'll make this quick. Chair, we respectfully oppose this measure. This could impact not just our biotech sector, but also crops like papaya. Even there's a move for plant-based meals in our farm-to-school programs. Plant-based meals are usually made out of soybean, which is usually a biotech crop. So even corn may be impacted by this. So again, from a parity standpoint, from an ag production standpoint, we do respectfully oppose this measure. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Hunter Hevelin, Farm Bureau. I'm sorry, Hawaii Farmers Union.
We all get along. Hunter Hevelin with Hawaii Farmers Union. We'll stand on our written testimony in support of this measure. We view it as an important one to bring parity to the tax field for agricultural producers across the state. This was first implemented based on my non-legal expertise in 2008 and has a couple of times by previous legislatures been recommended to be repealed, but its sunset date was extended and then removed. We support, ideally, and I think the title may allow for this, maybe just removing the general excise tax on agricultural goods produced locally. However, maintaining a carve-out for one particular sector of the industry that has already been the recipient of subsidy, whether it was by research done by the College of Tropical Agriculture and Human Resources producing key seeds for papaya crops here, or supporting of larger international agribusiness entities which have their own R&D operations. seems like we needn't continue as a state to continue to provide this tiny carve-out for one portion of our agricultural industry. That being said, we would love to see a carve-out for the entirety of our agricultural industry. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom Yamachika, Tax Foundation of Hawaii.
Thank you, Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee. Tom Yamachika from Tax Foundation of Hawaii. We will stand on written testimony and be available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Ted Boland, Climate Protectors Hawaii. In support, Danny Kapchoi from Hawaii Crop Improvement Association is opposed. Jeanette Gurung from the Women's Organizing for Change in Ag is in support. Jean Harrington, Biotechnology Innovation Organization, opposed. Ann Frederick from HAPA is in support. And we had 31 in support, 3 opposed, and 4 with comments. I'll go through those who are also in support. Roberts Emery from the Green Party of Hawaii. These are all in support. Robert Bentz, Terry Sava'inaea, Georgia Hoops, B.A. McClintock, Sophia Gravel, Elio Starbright, Troy Schatz, Emilia Briscoe, L. Orster, Selen Sorge, Ann Dorsey, Michelle Nihipali, Kealakai Hammond, Emily Gambino, Dylan Ramos, Jacqueline Ambrose, Jere Manassas, Samantha Praise, Stacy Alapai, Val Herzog, Jennifer Chiwa, Deborah Chavar, Kim No-hyun, Isis Usborne, Katrina Ahia, and Kayla Pa'ahana. Anyone else wishing to testify on this measure? Members, any questions?
Question, Department of Ag.
Senator Decoy.
Department of Ag. Director, do you agree that farms engaged in production of genetically engineered products no longer need this general excise tax credit?
I do.
You believe that they don't need?
Oh,
that?
they don't, yes, because they have enjoyed the benefit for a while, and in the name of fairness and equity, I'm saying that everyone should pay the same tax if you're in ag production. That was our testimony.
So how many farms that are growing food in Hawaii are genetically engineered?
I'd have to defer and come back to you on that. It's usually just the bigger farms, but to Brian's point, Brian Miyamoto's farm, the papaya growers also have genetically engineered product, and so I would have to count them. I don't know how many.
So you believe they no longer need the general excise tax credit?
Exemption.
No, I said they no longer need this general excise tax credit. You agree that they don't need the general excise tax credit?
I do.
Even the papaya growers?
Yes.
It's a yes or no?
It's a yes.
You believe they don't need the general excise tax credit? Can you give me the amount of food grown in Hawaii that is genetically modified, eaten here in Hawaii, and how much we import, as well as those that are not genetically engineered, and how much people we feed in the state of Hawaii? I don't have time. I know we're running out of time, so
I don't
can you
know
just
that-
get that information to me?
I'll try.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank
Sorry.
you. And moving on to the last measure on the 1 o'clock agenda is SB 765, relating to beekeeping, clarifies the registration process for beekeepers with the Department of Ag, requiring the Department of Ag to provide guidance and support to registered beekeepers to help beekeepers adhere to certain industry standards and best management practices. Establishes a limitation on liability for any registered beekeeper who follows industry standards and best practices. And we have Department of Ag.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Department of Ag stands on our written testimony in strong support.
Thank you. Next is Wendy Gady from ADC.
Chair, Vice Chair, members of the committee, Wendy Gady, ABC, and we stand in strong support and a written testimony.
Thank you. Carletta Amarino from the Office of Information Practices. With comments, Ted Kefalis from Grassroots Institute of Hawaii. In support, Brian Miyamoto, Hawaii Farm Bureau.
Thank you, Chair. The Hawaii Farm Bureau stand on its written testimony in support.
Thank you. Nathan Trump from the Island Harvest. In support, and Jay Ashman, Ken Kajihara, and David Fuertes are also in support. So there were 8 in support, 0 opposed, and 1 comment. Members, any questions? Beekeeping. Okay, we can just go into decision-making. All right, let's see. All right, on the first measure, the constitutional amendment, SB 559. The chair's, sometimes there's a saying, the 5th time is the charm. There are 3 states nationally who have already passed green amendments. They are Pennsylvania, Montana, and New York. And the chair's recommendation will be to pass with tech amendments. Any comments or concerns?
Yes, Chair.
Yes.
Quick comment. Though I agree with the intent, I'm concerned about implementation of anytime we do a amendment to the Constitution, so I'm going to be voting with reservations.
Okay.
Because I'm concerned.
All right. Thank you. And so the chair votes aye. Vice Chair?
Chair votes aye, Vice Chair votes with reservations. Senator Coit?
Aye.
Senator Rhodes?
Aye.
Senator Alwa?
Aye.
Chair, you have 5 in favor. Motion is adopted.
Thank you, members. Next is SB 552 relating to ag and establishing a healthy soils program. And so the chair's recommendation will be to pass with amendments to blank the appropriation amount, inserting that into the committee report for consideration, as well as adding into the consideration of ADC, the Agribusiness Development Corporation, as a possibility to run the program, and defecting the date to July 1st, 2050. Any discussion, concerns? Chair votes aye. Vice Chair?
Chair votes aye, Vice Chair votes aye. Senator Coit?
Aye.
Senator Rhodes? Aye. Senator Alwa?
Aye.
Chair, you have 5 in favor.
Thank you, members. SB 678, establishing the Agricultural Development and Food Security Special Fund. On this one, I need some more time on this. I'd like to defer decision-making till Wednesday, January 29th, 2025 at 1:01 PM here in room 244. Next up is SB 693 relating to the Food Hub pilot. Chair's recommendation will be to pass with amendments to blank the appropriation amount and insert that into the committee report for consideration, and so also to defect the date to July 1st, 2050. Any concerns, discussion? Chair votes aye. Vice Chair?
Chair votes aye, Vice Chair votes aye. Senator Coit?
Aye.
Senator Rhodes?
Aye.
Senator Alwa?
Aye.
Chair, you have 5 in favor. Motion is adopted.
Where? Say it again. Which one? That's not 678?
No, he said he was 244.
Oh.
It's supposed to be 224.
224. I'll correct myself there. The room is 224 instead of 244. Thank you. Okay. So we are on 496?
Yes.
Is that right? Yeah.
496.
496, relating to ag, requiring the Board of Ag to define the terms bona fide farmer. Let's see here. This one as well. We need some more time for decision-making, so I will defer DM until Wednesday at 1:01 PM here in room 224. And then 688, SB 688, establishing grant specialist positions within the Department of Ag. The chair's recommendation would be passed with an amendment to defect the date to July 1st, 2050, and inserting Department of Ag's request for funding into the committee report. Any discussion? Chair votes aye. Vice Chair?
Passing with amendments, chair votes aye, vice chair votes aye. Senator DeCoite?
Aye.
Senator Rhodes?
Aye.
Senator Wah?
Aye.
Chair 5 in favor, motion adopted.
Thank you, members. SB 245, relating to ownership of ag lands. This one as well, we need some more time to consider this measure, so we'll defer decision-making to Wednesday, January 29th, 1:01 PM here in room 224. Moving on to SB 387 on the service animals. The recommendation will be to pass with amendments to defect the date to July 1st, 2050, and note in the committee report for the next committee to consider Department of Ag's request for permanent annual funding. Chair votes aye. Vice Chair?
Chair, I will be voting with reservations.
Okay.
Because I'm very sensitive to what they're talking about with animal industries. Though I think the intent is there, I think we need to get some work on it. So chair votes aye, vice chair votes with reservations. Senator DeCoite?
Reservations?
Senator Rhodes?
Aye.
Senator Elwha?
Aye.
Chair, you have 5 in favor. Motion is adopted.
Thank you, members. Moving on to SB 328, an income tax credit for the conversion of a dairy farm to a hog farm. Recommendation of the chair is to pass as is. Any discussion? Chair votes aye. Vice Chair?
Passing unamended, chair votes aye, vice chair votes aye. Senator DeCoite?
Aye.
Senator Rhodes?
Aye.
Senator Elwha?
Aye.
Chair, you have 5 in favor. Motion is adopted.
Thank you, members. SB 329 relating to water pollution. On this one, we need some more time as well, so we'll defer decision-making on SB 329 till Wednesday, January 29th at 1:01 PM in room 224. Also, with the following measure, SB 681, I'd like to defer that one as well till Wednesday, same date, January 29th at 1:01 PM in room 224. And moving on to the last measure on beekeeping. The recommendation on this one will be to pass with amendments from OIP to clarify that beekeeper names and business addresses will still be available to the public, and also to defect the date to July 1st, 2050. Any discussion? Chair votes aye.
Chair votes aye, passing with amendments. Vice chair votes aye. Senator DeCoite?
Aye.
Senator Rhodes?
Reservations.
Senator Elwha?
Aye.
Chair, you have 5 in favor. Motion is adopted.
Thank you very much, and that concludes the 1 o'clock agenda. Calling to order the 101 agenda for some decision-making on one measure, SB 184, relating to the deposit beverage container program, increasing the deposit and refund value for beverage containers from 5 cents to 10 cents under the deposit beverage container program. And so the chair's recommendation will be to pass as is. Is there any discussion? Chair votes aye. Vice Chair?
Chair, on the Senate Bill 184, chair votes aye. Vice chair will be voting with reservations due to the fund balance. Senator DeCoite?
Reservations?
Senator Rhodes?
Aye.
Senator Elwha?
No.
Chair, you have 4 in favor. Motion is adopted.
Thank you, members, and that concludes the 101. I'm sorry, you have to count down again?
It's okay. You can go. You can keep going.
Okay. So this measure, SB 240, is the right to farm the cultural inclusion. So we actually decided this last, but there was a technical error. So as the Committee on Hawaiian deferred this measure, the chair's recommendation for AEN is also to defer this measure indefinitely. And so that concludes our AEN hearings for today. Mahalo. Thanks, everybody. Mahalo.
You, Mike.